Hi there, I'm Michael Warszalek, and I'm doing the fire regime of Colorado's subalpine lodgepole pine forests. Quick little ecosystem description. There are three types of lodgepole pine stands. Upper elevation limits include a mix with Engelmann spruce, subalpine fir, and aspen. Middle elevations are pure stands with little to no understory. Lower elevation limits in the montane regions are mixed with ponderosa pine, Douglas fir, and aspen. The climate, the ponderosa pine, there's all four seasons. Precipitation, substantial winter snowpack, thunderstorms, most often in July and August. Higher altitudes experience a decrease in temperature and increase in precipitation. Some notable wildlife walking through these forests are elk, deer, mountain lion, black bears, porcupines, beavers, mice, squirrels, chipmunks, hummingbirds, hawks, owls, gray jay, and Steller's jay. Here's some pictures of wildlife I took hiking throughout a lodgepole pine forest last summer. The inquisitive hummingbirds kept close tabs on me, and I also found evidence of bear scratchings on trees. Was able to track one down to a little stream, but that bear was not happy with me getting close. Lots of snorting and stamping of the feet, so I decided not to get close enough for a picture and never got a chance to see him. The attitude of the bears here in Colorado seems to be different than the Shenandoah Mountains. I hiked the Shenandoahs for a little bit, and the bears were definitely way more friendly and used to people. Bears in Colorado, still haven't seen one in the wild. A little more wildlife pictures I took on that hike. Found some squirrels climbing up on rocks, keeping an eye on me, and evidence that humans have been in that forest at least since the 80s. Anybody else remember those pull-tab beer cans? Been a long time. Lodgepole pine forests are found from approximately 9,000 to 11,000 feet above sea level. Here in Colorado, they're found in the west central part where the mountains get high enough for that to occur. And this is only a small part of where we actually find lodgepole pine forests. As you can see, they're found all the way up through Canada and all the way west out to California. There is a picture of my daughter and I going through a mixed stand forest, and we were looking for lodgepole pines. She got very excited and wanted to try skiing in the trees. Oh, it was an experience. Anyway, we didn't find too many lodgepole pines out there. I think we were at the upper limit that we would find lodgepole pines. It's pretty high up there. We were getting closer and closer to tree line. Lodgepole pine, or Pinus cortana, grows tall and straight, has a very thin bark that's highly susceptible to fire, shade intolerant. Lower branches eventually self-prune in response to lack of light. Thin, narrow crowns compete for sunlight. They create lodgepole pine deserts from lack of understory. Professor Brown mentioned that not many plants like cool, dark, and dry conditions. They have shallow roots that are susceptible to wind throw, but we found that out. I took the 8th graders on a field trip, and they thought it was fun to knock over the trees that were killed by the pine beetles, and it was very easy for them to knock them over. Very dangerous activity. I had to stop them immediately. Anyway, they protect each other from the wind because they grow in such dense stands. They're adapted to stand replacing fires. They produce a lot of seeds every 1 to 3 years. They're known as fire embracers. Cones can be serotinous or non-serotinous. Serotinous cones can exist for 15 years in a canopy. Non-serotinous seeds are winged and can travel up to 200 feet. Seedlings favor bare mineral soil, shorter needles promote longer duration of burning, and they have a low overall resistance to fire. And the two pictures I took there, one I climbed up on a big rock and got above the trees to show you how lush and dense that those trees like to grow. And then underneath, you can see there's not much growing underneath there, but just the lodgepole pines. Major plant and animal responses to the fire. So during the fire, depending on the speed of the fire front, animals try to move out of the way or find shelter to survive. It's a stand replacing very hot fire, so not much actually survives if caught in the fire. After the stand replacing fire, however, the canopy opens up, allowing sunlight to penetrate the mineral exposed surface for the first time maybe in decades or centuries. Early cereal plants, grasses, forbs, and herbs take up residence. There's also a lot of snacks created and new food sources from all the new plants that are growing that attract more wildlife during this period. All right, so hiking in that lodgepole pine forest, I got some pictures where there were no trees, and I saw a lot more grass and a lot more flowers. In the absence of lodgepole pines, I was also to find some pretty interesting monocots and some aspen trees. So those lodgepole pines don't like to share the forest, I guess. Right. Variations in response according to fire severity. So lodgepole pine forest fires are usually stand replacing hot crown fires. Major widespread mortality, high severity. If the seed bank was well stocked, though, the stand will replace itself. Lodgepole pines can survive low severity fires only if the fire damage does not girdle the circumference of the whole tree. This is not as common of an occurrence. Usually they're stand replacing fires. So in my hike through that lodgepole pine forest, I was able to find an area where there was a fire, and only one side of the trees were burned in that region there. So it was kind of neat to see, like half and half. Half of the tree was burned, and half the tree was alive, and it was still green on top. I should have got more pictures of those, thinking back. And then we can see in the right picture that there was a lot more mortality there. There was a stand replacing fire. Things were blown over, and somebody came in there and cleaned it up a little bit. We can see more snags created, and then we can see all the little baby lodgepole pines growing up in the background. That's referred to as a dog hair stand, I guess, because it's kind of scraggly looking. So, post-fire response from a stand replacing fire. Lodgepole pine seedlings can be as numerous as 20,000 per acre. These seedlings grow fast. They compete against each other and other species. They're producing these dog hair stands. 40 to 50 years following a fire, seedlings and herbaceous plants coexist. The stand is fire resistant usually during this stage because of the high moisture contents in the leaves. 50 to 150 years after fire, a dense stand of trees can be 50 feet tall and shade out the understory, suppressing all other plants and discouraging wildlife. 150 to 300 years after a fire, the wildfire threat starts to increase again. Overcrowding and sporadic deaths of pines is found, but diversity can increase with new openings in the canopy. At about 300 years after the fire event, many of the original trees are dying and falling over, and it's creating a substantial risk of wildfire. And if a wildfire doesn't occur, Engelmann spruce and subalpine fir slowly replace the stand, but they can also act as ladders during this stage, increasing fire severity and risk. So the fire regime of the lodgepole pine forest, it's kind of all over the place depending on what I was reading. Frequency every 150 to 300 years, could be up to 400 to 600 years, but some stands actually burn much more frequently, and about every 25 years. Intensity is very intense, hot crown fires, high winds and steep slopes where they are found. The size can be very large, 200,000 plus acres. During the infamous 1910 season, over 4 million acres of lodgepole pine forest burned in North America. So that was a bad year for them. Patterns, large, sprawling with the possibility of jumping ahead of the fire front. Season could be year-round, but they have their highest chances in June. And severity, absolute destruction of trees and structures. Soil is left intact enough for the seedlings, though. So historical changes to the fire regime. We're seeing lots more fires in the last couple of years, but it's important to note that lodgepole pine forests have always experienced large stand replacing fires. However, fire suppression over the last century has added more fuels and let the older stands kind of health decline. Anthropogenic climate change is also increasing the length of a fire season, and changes in precipitation and snowpack are decreasing, and we're also seeing higher air temperatures. So we are seeing possibly worse fires. Is it because of the fire suppression? Is it because of the climate change? Is it just the way it always has been? I guess these are good studies that probably should take place. So current issues in lodgepole pine forests, the wildland-urban interface is increasing. Population, people just want to live in the forest and around the forest. Mixed stands and age and species thinned out provide the best buffer zones, but this goes against the ecology of the lodgepole pines as wind blows them over because they don't have as much protection. And lodgepole pines are prone to dangerous ground fires. There's a parasitic plant known as the dwarf mistletoe. That's a picture I have in the lower left corner there. Took in that hike I was talking about. Reduced growth and seed production. Large infestation may increase surface fuels but decrease canopy fuels because they're sucking out energy from the needles. The pine bark beetles. That's a big problem, and a consensus in all the readings I've been reading. Not much can be done. We just have to wait for the epidemic to end. The bark beetle kill has actually a brief time when the fire danger is lower, when the dead canopy has no fuel to create continuity. Once trees start falling, though, they act like ladders, and the fire danger then increases. Some areas actually contain a dangerously high level of 90% dead timber in some pine forests. And then increased fire interval or severity. If we see a lot of fires happening all the time, we're not seeing a chance for the seed bank to build back up, or it gets destroyed and those trees never get a chance to drop the new ones. So these are 4 giant issues. And here is a list of my references. The pictures I took, I was near Nederland, Loveland Ski Area, and Snow Mountain Ranch in the YMCA in Colorado. And all right, thanks. I hope you guys have a good day and maybe you learned something. If you think I can learn something because you have more experience than me, I'd like to hear about it from you. All right, have a good day. All right, thanks. Bye.